Minshola was always hard, working and honest, but how did she find herself at the A1 Hotel? Introduction to a close relationship with the chief. Well, Seola works in Venus secretary Chagan M. And here are the days and the next week comes. On the agenda, important tasks from the hover in Seattle are important. The owner of the company. In the solar afternoon, Seola enters the office of President Chijinmu and proposes to lower the blinds, noticing his discomfort. He tells her that there is no need to lower the blinds because he is worried about the release she filed. Seol-ha wondered why this letter was so worried about Youngma, and she even tested the correctness of her pen strokes on the internet so that everything was flawless. President John Moo is painful that the resignation letter is written so perfectly, and he notes that it is achieving perfection in everything. By postponing the case for later, he first tries to understand why Seol-ha suddenly decided to file a resignation statement. Seol-ha replies that she has personal reasons for the desire to resign, just as Junmoo has their reasons to try to keep it. It has been working side by side with her for 3 years, and during this time, she has always been one step ahead. When you need to meet with the vice office, it always had a prepared gift. Besides, last summer when Seola went on vacation, Chonghwa realized how valuable it was. Its absence caused it to be true working paralysis. Now she wants to leave. To keep it left, Chongmu reminds that they have been working together for 3 years, and he can't do without her. Since she is silent, Chongmu asks, there has been some serious event that she intends to be released. She assures him that this is not a reason for her desire to be released. Now he realizes that her intention to leave work is not related to something inevitable. It is for him as a fall of a huge stone. In order to save the situation, Jungma offers Saolsi raising, but she is worried that others will perceive it as protectionism. All his proposals did not give results. And when Jungma holds his eyes on Saolsi's face, he realizes that she does not plan to change her intentions. He decides to stop guessing what Celia wants and will understand that it is better to just ask her about it. Make it comfortable. Jeonmu proposes to fulfill any of her desire, promising to satisfy the request, whatever it may be. The reaction of Cheol-hee to hear reveals that it has a request, which will probably be difficult to perform, asked him to get closer to her. It is immediately felt that the atmosphere in the room has become tense. She does not know how Youngma will react, and because of that, she seems that she has made a mistake. Youngma, for his part, believes that he heard her words wrong. Youngma is going to confirm what is heard when Seol-her is apologizing for her request. She asks the president to pretend that he has heard nothing. She is ashamed and she turns away, confessing that she went crazy and said something strange. To her surprise, Jung-em does not boil her. Instead, he says he would think about her request. He promises to give her an answer for the weekend. The same day, during a lunch break with workers, Seola confesses a colleague who accidentally invited Jum to stay overnight. Her colleague is hard to believe that Seola dared to invite Jum to stay overnight. This is because Jung-hum is young and successful. In their world, everything that Jung-hum touches is turning into gold. His friend notes that Jung-hum is constantly getting into news and is popular with women. She scolds Alpha for such an absurd request without prior confession and feelings and asks what she had found on. Sayela exhaled with disappointment and began to explain what made her make such a request. She began with a story about how her unrequited love for June was born 3 years ago when she just started working with him. Suddenly, Junmoo exploded with laughter. It was a cold winter morning, and she got acquainted with Junwoo with his plans for the day. During a briefing, the fat suddenly stopped, possibly because of the cold. She promised that everything would be on the schedule and apologized for excitement. When she finished with her help, she returned to the office where the secretary reported that John M.U. had handed over to her. The secretary laid the heater on the table of Seola. The secretary reported that John Moo prepared a hot water bottle for each employee. Seola perceived it as his kindness and care for workers, but I saw much more. Unfortunately, shortly after she realized her feelings to her leader, they said that he got engaged. She learned from rumors that Yunmoo would probably get involved with the younger daughter of the Tichan group. It was on the day of Seolha feelings to him that there was a meeting with that group. Maybe discussed the engagement. Of course, the gossip did not know everything. She lived in the world, different from the usual for ordinary people. Undoubtedly, these were only rumors. However, he heard was reminiscent of Seol-ha that John was always unattainable for her. After thought, she did not even notice how she transfused the coffee from the cup. It was noticeable. That is why she applied for dismissal, which she now regrets. She feels worthless, but her friend insists that she is not so pessimistic. Zile has friends who suspect that their boss can have a feeling for Zileha because of his manner of communicating with her. However, she does not imagine how she will now meet with the Jungleman. She puts her drink on the table and, moving on a more serious tone, persistently asks Tiola to postpone all his thoughts and listen carefully no matter what is said. Then she asks Kiol if she really wants to meet her boss. They continue to discuss this without knowing that John Moo is slowly approaching them. Seol's girlfriend asks her whether she always wants to meet a tall and beautiful man. After all, these are the two features that are complemented by his unique personality, make him even better. But she is sure that he is interested in Sao Lhe, so she advises her to meet him at least once. Seol Ha tries to understand what her girlfriend wants to say. When Junmoo comes behind and talks to it, it rotates and answers. At this point, she checks her phone and sees two messages, one from the boss and the other from a friend whom is called In7. She is more interested in a message from Isima, in which he remembers that her boss looked envious. She smiles ironically. She thinks he just wants to discuss work. It looks like it is when he starts talking about the meeting that they need to go to. Junmoo is wondering whether an urgent call, suggesting her to answer if it is something urgent. Seola assures that the call is not so urgent. She reminds herself not to admire because Jun can just ask. In the end, it does not answer, remaining silent until the elevator door is dissolved. When they open, Seola tries to get out, but Yunam stops her. The atmosphere in the elevator is noticeably heated through this unexpected step. He agrees that they should get closer to each other, but there is one condition. The number of tender meetings between them will not be limited. She gives a flurry of cursing when she realizes that he is a superstar brand he bought. The proposal is surprised to be surprised at Solch, and her reaction gives rise to Youngma that she does not like it. However, Youngma reminds her that she was boldly behaving a few hours ago. Finally, she grunted softly, who agreed to the conditions. It was an answer, but it is not enough for Youngma, so he makes her say it loudly, helping to gain courage and clearly express the consent of the time. Her consent is the cause of the passionate moment that will take place later at the Hotel A. Upon completion of the meeting, Jongmu escorts Sael down, orders a taxi for her, and is preparing to say goodbye. But before that, Saola remembers the important meeting planned for later and asks if she is sure that he can miss her. Chanmu asserts the salt that all is well and apologizes for not having to spend her home. Again, she assures her that she will cope and advises her to go home to relax. Then he decides to be a little romantic and says Cieli that she had a hard day because of him, hinting at their little minute of interest. However, Yunma does not stop there. He notes that Sayolha complained of fatigue, which is why he wanted to leave faster. Sayolha asks Junma to call her if you need to do something, and the taxi goes, taking her with him. Machine license plates, in case you need. In the end, Saola returns home safely and takes a bath. Left alone, Saola begins to doubt her normality and thinks about how tomorrow he can look into the Youngma's eyes at work. Yet Seolha cannot throw a Youngma out of his head. She tries to wave the Youngma's thoughts to get back to reality, but it is anxiety when a text message comes. She thinks, can it be from Jungle? However, when she checks, it's not from him, and she reproaches herself for what she thought about Youngma, because he is now at a meeting. Seolha, lying in bed with an upset face, recalls that she does not even meet Youngma. Recognizing this, she decides not to put unnecessary expectations and not run forward. He believes that she is probably tired and advises her to relax well, promising to meet her tomorrow. After all, it falls asleep. But in the middle of the night, her phone suddenly begins to call. The sleepy dance takes the phone, trying to determine who is calling. Sleeping Solha sees that a call from a Juanem that awakens it instantly. Worried? Yunam asks if he woke up the sulk, but she insists not. Junam assured Seol that there was no reason to worry because the meeting was successful. He tells her that he wanted to call earlier, but could not because President Kim has problems with alcohol. She is surprised why there is no intoxication in his voice. He tells her how he was in a hurry to call, knowing that it is too late. However, his thoughts were constantly returning to her, worrying that she remains alone. His words melt her heart, forcing him to fight loudly. He apologizes for saying a lot. His words are so kind and sincere that they penetrate into the heart, forcing you to doubt if it can fall asleep again. Meanwhile, the Jungle just looks at his phone after talking. He was aware that he was always rumored about his relationship with this. However, when people noticed how professionally she did her job, rumors disappeared. In 3 years of working together, the Jungle spent almost every day next to Salha. Finally, the jungle returned home and gets ready for sleep. However, the jungle cannot get rid of the thoughts of the Seolha, and it drives him crazy. The next day, Seolha, as always, at work. Junmin usually does not ask Yeol about his personal, so she is wondering why he suddenly showed curiosity. Familiarization of the Junma with the tasks today. She also brought him a sandwich. When she lists his task, the Junma is only surprised by her incredible efficiency. In the elevator on the way down, they remain in loud silence for a few minutes. This is reminiscent of Sayeli, of the closeness that she and Chongma felt last night. It is embarrassed. Sayeli drives away these thoughts and awkwardly answers that he was so good that he feels restored. Chongma understands her reaction but says nothing. He says he's glad that she got a good night. As if the atmosphere in the elevator has not yet been sufficiently tense, Chongma asks in Salhi whether she heard about his engagement. It jumped by surprise and she begins to panic, and he asks if it is rumors that Sayela made this proposal. Saola was surprised, learning that talking about engagement was only a fiction. She recalls how Janmu told her that the story of his bride was only meaningless rumors. She is expected in an inconvenient conversation from which she does not know how to get out. But fate gives her unexpected help. Suddenly her phone begins to vibrate. Seol-ha appeals to Chonem to check her phone and he allows her to do it. This is a notification of the release of the Christmas album Gani Angel. However, John M.U. does not know about it and asks whether it is somehow related to work. She apologizes with oppression that she is forced to take a vacation at that moment. He does not understand why, after a sudden break, the village does not answer the calls and worries for it. However, Jonggu asserts her that everything is fine. He notices that she looks upset, and she wonders if something happened. Alon assures that everything is fine with her and promises that no personal problems will affect work. Chan just nods silently, allowing Seolzi to go home. We do not know that the feasible mood has actually spoiled. She sits on a bus, immersed in her thoughts, heading somewhere. She thinks of how every year with the approach of winter, she visits her father. Her father is serving a punishment for murder, so she decides to finish the conversation quickly. Changma, catching urgency, advises her to go to open the door. In particular, it is an adventure. Her father was always a good man, so she could not believe that he was capable of such until the judge explained everything in detail. Everything was clear on the day of the sentence to her father. The problem was not that he hit the victim, but that, knowing that he was alive, deliberately ignored him. The driver was arrested and imprisoned, but it did not change what happened. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, which seemed only a slight punishment for the crime. John Moo was suppressed immediately, seeing how Chaz was extinguished as God. He firmly decided to tolerate it for the sake of saving Oni. This thought gave him the strength to hold on. However, every time Sialha comes to visit him, he refuses to meet her. The guard says Celia that although her father refuses to see her, in the days of her visits, he comes to life. He points out that it seems as if the father of Celia is quiet for her. Getting out of prison, she goes to the store. There, he buys a surprise pack and wins a soft toy, a snowman. The store owner welcomes her and admires her good luck. Such is good because many wanted this snowman. However, Ulla hoped to find something else by opening the package. In view of this, the shop owner suggests Cielci to try to exchange this snowman for something else because he is the most popular. Cielci admits that this is a good offer, but there is a problem. She wants to get it on her own. Her confession is interested in the owner of the store, so she asks Sayoli what she needs. Once a hole fled without a trace, and it seems that the reason is related to the crime committed by her father. Leaving the store, she mentally goes home, feeling winter moods. Suddenly the phone calls. This is her girlfriend, June 7. June 7 is interested in when Sial has visited her father for the last time, and it makes her thoughts return to childhood. Sial's father committed a crime when she was still very young. Since he was only a guardian and no one was left, Sial was sent to the Soybang orphan, her valuable friend who understands all her circumstances. Later, Yoon Si-mim says that she prepared a lot of food and asks if Shalha would like to visit her. Sayolha notices that Yoon Si-mim is worried about her. You and Simteli see that you do not need an apology. Ayolha offers a little light beer instead of dinner. You can see Magray. She reports Ayolsi that she will be. Yunchima's benevolence finds a response in the heart of Telga, who thanks her. Suddenly, June 7 is interested in what Telga does. Meanwhile, Jongmu looks gloomy. He constantly checks his phone, waiting for a response from Kelga. Jongmu thinks about whether something happened to Chelga, and at that moment she calls him. Without waiting for the phone to ring longer, Jong-moo immediately answers the call. Chaos prevailed in the office due to its absence. He wants to find out whether Sal has made the situation specifically so that he realizes that she is the most effective secretary. She didn't even answer her calls all day. Concerned, Salha asks, or Jong-yu replies that everything is fine at work, but he is worried that she unexpectedly took a vacation. He tells her confident intonation that if this question is embarrassed, she does not have to talk about it. Then he emphasizes that he just worries for her. See how Youngma thanks her for her care. She is already going to say something else when suddenly begins to sound a few different calls in the door. She suspects that this can be somehow associated with a shortage. He also asks her to relax for a bit, as she will see her next week, and completes the call. Now that he knows that Seola is okay, Young Moline sits again on his chair, thinking about the door call, as she often checked her phone at work and how her appearance has recently improved. He also noted that Celia often checked her phone and asked the gossip staff whether they saw the Sehul. They were answered that Sehul had just left to accept the call. Then he begins to worry about a call at the door he heard yesterday, talking to CAO-LH. In love and inattentive, John goes to his office, and he sees Kauha. Sao Lua quickly introduces a business in the course of business, reporting that TechCon seeks to meet him as soon as possible, and President Kim will arrive in person. She told him that she had already planned a meeting for tomorrow night. He agrees with that and asks what he is on the schedule. It turns out that everyone around does not even understand what Youngam is saying. He explains that he noticed. Since they spent the evening together, she has been using all her leave days. Jungma also notes that today, when he was checking, Seola was not in his workplace. Now, Seola realized that there was a misunderstanding and decided to clarify him. She assured Youngma that she really needs to solve her personal affairs. Olga also turns to Faith Youngwoo that June 7 introduced her to a guy. She is going to explain that they were talking about him, but he suddenly interrupts her. She forgot about the door call, so he reminds of it. Cold sweat flows down the face of John after everything heard, realizing that he just sounded like a weirdo. He sighs with annoyance, ashamed of his mistake, while Seol-ha feels awkward, thinking if he did not think Chong-moo was avoiding him from that day. Seol was about to say more when the door suddenly interrupted the knock. The man at the door reports Chong-moo that he tried to contact him but could not. Therefore, she came to his office to report an urgent meeting on the previous project. Chong-moo's reaction is mixed. He is glad that the woman saved him from an uncomfortable conversation, or he was annoying that they were interrupted from Seol. Seol-ha knows that much has remained unsaid. The meeting is delayed almost by the end of the day. Meanwhile, Seol-ha and John-moo, doing their own business, do not exchange a word. Finally, ending with work a day, Seol-ha noticed that in the morning they never exchanged a single word. Suddenly, Chongum passes by, noticing that Seol-ha is still working. He asks in surprise why she has not finished. Seol-ha explains that she still needs a lot to complete. He passes by, warning it not to overstress. Seeing that he went to his office, Seol-ha considers it a great opportunity to talk to him and follows him. Once she comes in, he immediately begins the conversation, asking Jong-moo forgot about the proposal she made him recently. This was the beginning of her contradictory emotions. However, John-moo still could not understand why she wanted to forget about their agreement. Seol-ha began with acknowledging that she was too emotional that day. Before she has time to continue, Chom interrupts her, asking if she wants to stop, because he may not have had an impression on her that day, trying to find out if she really wants to give up their agreement, as he restrained his feelings for her for 3 years. Jonin admits that it was the love for Solhee that made him agree to this proposal at first. Wow. Here it turns out none of them knew about it. She also held back her feelings for 3 years. She strives for clarity, but to give her it, the jungle continues his confession. He explains that he wanted to go to her yesterday, but doubted if he had the right. It was enough for Sil, and she confesses Jong-mo, who loves him too. After Silly's confession, Jong-mo gently puts her hand on her cheek, but suddenly stops and she tells her she ahead of events. However, he stops it, ordered not to work overtime today, explaining that she already has plans, and then he tells her that they had just made him. The action is transferred to the Dioa Hotel, where Chongma and Seolga stop and spend all night in close communication. In the morning, Chongma and Seolga's clothes are scattered in the hotel room. When she finally opens her eyes, she sees that Chongma is still sleeping and examining his face carefully. Looking back, she never expected to see his face at the end of the week. Watching him more closely, she concludes that Jang-mo, she is going to joke his face, but he wakes up in time and hugs her. He embraces her hand and says that if she looks closely, he will see that there is nothing except the surveillance camera. It seems that he did not sleep all night, and now he will tease the village, trying to find out if she was not enough for her to be the previous evening. One Monday, Sehulga returned to work feeling drowsiness because last night she could not sleep. Tears shine in her eyes when Yunsum calls her. It turns out that Yunsum has been calling for a long time, but she did not notice it because she was inattentive. It awakens the curiosity of Yunsum to find out what was so excited by Seal. Because of his current state, Seal cannot understand where to start. She remembers that the latter she told about Yunsumi was that Jongmu accepted the proposal. Yunsum guesses that Scott was so embarrassed by the good news related to Jongmu. She is not mistaken. Scott tells her that they have officially decided to be in a relationship. The director arrives at the Korea International Airport. He is annoyed that he must go to Korea again, but the question remains whether this man is a villain. The exception is the unhappy child who does not look at his feet and accidentally stumbles on him. The child is overwhelmed and falls. Then he just goes, as if nothing happened. The likelihood that this man of the thief is quite high, especially because of his thoughts are constantly spinning Youngm. Ha and Youngmu are completing work earlier because they have an evening meeting with a T-Kanga. The meeting will begin at 1800 hours. Jungma notes that the situation is urgent, so there is no other way, although it does not specify what it is about. He then asks Seola HA to reserve a multifunction room for him. Because of their relationship, it is not surprising that Seul Ha will mistakenly interpret the intentions of Jongmu. He explains that he needed a room to rest before the meeting, because last night he was so busy that he could not fall asleep. Holidays are needed because he knows that Kim President has the ability to exhaust others. Suddenly, Chongum tries to take Zeola by the hand, but she retreats, insulting it with her explanation. However, Chongum only restrains anger, annoying the papers that she holds, and repeats the already said. Chom tells her, thinking what the staff think if they see them holding their hands. Saola is still in doubt, so she looks around to make sure that no one is around. Before taking Junmu by the hand, Saola confesses to him that it is only today. Saola suggests to get behind the wheel if Junmu is tired. However, it is not surprising that he still does not allow her to do it. Later on that day, at a meeting with President Kim, John Moo and President Kim discussed important issues. Seola does not agree with what is discussed. During the meeting, she notes that President Kim looks at her strange, but does not understand why. The meeting and the strange view of President Kim are increasingly annoying Seol-hoo. But most of all, she is outraged that she cannot say anything. They return to discuss a common desire to participate in the auction for the land and continue this conversation until late at night. After the meeting, they still talk about the land. President Kim proposes to take the question of sales, and John M.U. assures him that it is acceptable if he completes everything on time. After the meeting, President Kim acts suspiciously, contacting Silchi with a proposal to go to another place. He notes that she has made a lot of effort. However, without having time to complete his proposal, President Kim interrupts when the jungle intervenes. He transmits the keys to the Sola machine, saying that he seems to have forgotten his phone in the car. Left alone, President Kim Joda notes that Chungmu really likes to work with a young and beautiful girl. However, President Kim does not notice the hint and continues. He notes that Sayolha wrapped his hair, and it made it even more beautiful. So, during the meeting, he could not focus. All these conversations annoy Chungma every time, but President Kim does not notice it. He only notices that Chungma is too sensitive today, unlike ordinary days. President Kim makes it that he does not understand what Chungma says. It was the sound of a shot of Chungma on the wall. He states that he wanted to point out cracks, which is visible even from afar, and the wall is actually worthless. He continues. Coldly notes that even a slight blow on the wall will leave a crack, which is evidence of poor quality construction. His indifferent tone seems to scare President Kim. Chanmu twice hit the wall. He also believes that a misunderstanding has occurred and seeks to relieve tension. Changam assures that there is no misunderstanding. He just wants to check the truth. He asks President Kim whether Royal Philips is known for careless construction that does not meet Tikang standards. When she checks, she sees a message from Jongmu, where he apologizes for hesitantly looking at her during the meeting. It cannot understand what is meant. When Changam approaches her and offers to go because he found his phone. Although it has already been decided, she is interested in whether they will go to another place that President Kim has spoken about. Junmu told her that the agreement has been canceled. On the upper floor, in his office, President Kim boils from rage. His apologies to Olga were imposed. He is still thinking when someone, tilting his head, knocks on the door of the office and goes inside. President Kim is unable to hold back emotions, stifles the document on the table, and asks him where he is. The director Khan, feeling the fatal consequences after the conversation of President Kim with Jong-moo, reports that President Kim is absent because he is instructed to take away from the steal of a certain young owner who recently arrived. Kim President is still indignant, but tries to restrain and asks Taegan if he knows. Taegan does not pay attention to this and addresses President Kim as an uncle. Taegan plays a tricky smile, looking at the Venus land bid and the construction of you. Emphasizing that his goals with his uncle coincide, Taegan behaves treacherously. He seems to have conceived something wrong about the Jonglu, which leaves the territory of the Tikong, without even knowing the arrival of Taegan. It is unknown where Seola and Youngma are heading. The mood in the car during their trip is obvious. Seola is upset because Youngma refused to tell what happened in the meeting room. He explains to her that he asked President Kim to resolve the question faster. She asks if Kim sent her text with apologies. However, he denies this, assuming that President Kim could apologize simply because of his own anxiety. He also notes that President Kim could realize how important the apology was to Seol-ha. She felt as if he had hit President Kim. But he just looks at his fists, disappointed that he could not hide them. Returning to Jongham's house, Seola cares carefully for his beaten fists. While he is working bruises, she advises Jongham not to pay attention to President Kim because she understands what he really is. She sighs relief, glad that Jongmoose did not find herself in the police department or hospital. Seola complains that leaving scars is unacceptable. She claims that she is feeling well, although sometimes there was a desire to hit the jungle. With confirmed health, Youngma looks upset, acknowledging that he had to pay attention from the beginning of the rumors about Kim President. He apologizes to the village for his inattention, but she assures him that there is no need to apologize. However, John is still worried. For confidence, he asks John to inform him if something happens with President Kim in the future, which will cause her discomfort. Seola assured that she was trusting the words of President Kim because he assured her that nothing would happen. However, he wondered what she was thinking about him. Okay, I ignore this question, but there is a strong desire to return home when the jungle and he disperses it, reminding her that they have agreed on the absence of restrictions on the number of times when they may be close. It makes her recall the moment when she agreed with it. Besides, Chongo feels that Seolha can be tired after work tomorrow. Finally, he decides to suppress his gusts and take her home. He did not have time to realize how she was already sitting on his knees. Junmoo asks Seo why she likes to lure it, but she believes that this conversation should be the opposite. The next day, Seol-ha works at extraordinary speed and they do not suspect that Seol-ha is struggling not to fall asleep and focus on work. She tries to distract herself with thoughts about something else, including the events of yesterday. Youngma watches from afar, but then says nothing. He is not in the elevator with the sneaking out. He may not notice it. He complains that Seola did not allow him to hold her in hand today. Having come to mind, Seola quietly reminds that they are at work now. Cheonam claims that Romeo and Juliet knew each other for only 5 days, but this was enough for them. He says Seol that if she has doubts about him, she should know that his gaze has changed since she appeared in his life. She confesses that once when Jongmoose called her ugly, these words caused her great pain. He sincerely apologizes for the case and asks Seola to forgive him. He promises to think more about her attitude and be more careful and caring. Salha agrees but puts forward her own suggestion, how she will never leave him, so he should never think about escape from her. They promise it to each other, holding hands firmly. Wife Mo jokes that if he ever thinks of escape, Solha will arrange him a good blow. She confirms in response that it will do it. When Solha and Jongma finally get to their stop and leave the elevator, Solha starts talking about the plan of its tomorrow. After some discussion, he notices that John does not listen to her and pays his attention to it. She sighs, puts a cup on the table, and asks if he can at least smile, because they have not seen themselves for 3 years. Chom corrects her. Only 2 years have passed. She asked if they could go there this year. She reminded him that she had moved to the United States 3 years ago. Finally, he remembers and laughs for forgotten. She squeezes with a smile, citing old age, and changes the topic of conversation. She asks how things are in the head. He calmly replies that everything is fine, but it does not prevent her from remembering how her head always ill in winter. Before she delves into the memories, Junmoo intervenes. certifying that the head is healthier than him and there is nothing to worry about. So let's return to the main. Why did she suddenly decide to come to Korea? She delayed a little before answering. It will happen in a few days. Junem's facial features become harsher. She had never worried about it before. So why now? She firmly squeezes the fabric of her dress. She says she saw her, the one they both think about. In a dream. She wept bitterly. It seemed that something remained unspoken. Youngma is silent, but his mother does not look. Instead, she softens her voice, asking if he still does not let her go. She says she understands how much a woman meant to him, but reminds that she is experiencing pain. Meanwhile, Saola sits at her table, trying to focus on work, but her thoughts wander. She has never seen Chan before. When she brought them tea, her mother thanked her. But John, tense like a string, only asked her to return to work. She still smiled and left. However, in the atmosphere of his office was something unusual. Alert. Soon her phone rang. It was Chang'em. At the end of the conversation, she mutilates under her nose, asking if he has migraines again. Not much time has passed since he last took the medicine. It brings tea, which, according to, should help ease migraines. However, he asks the medicine again. She gently reminds that a little time has passed from the last reception. Then she appeals to the mother with apology for interrupting her. The mother does not seem mind. He seemed to look at the variety of medication in his hand before taking more and nodded to consent. With these words, she went. Leaving the office, she sighs. She thought that the atmosphere inside had to improve, but still remains tense. Meeting with Youngma's mother is inconvenient, especially given that he never mentions her. Inside the jungle, he looks thoughtfully at the packaging with migraine pills in his hands. His mother, affecting this topic, notes that migraines seem to happen quite often. He only shrugs, they say, it is just a working stress. She noted that when Seolga came, he looked much calmer. She asks who would think that someone would be able to melt his icy heart. Janmu is silent in response. Janmu finally lays the medicine and starts talking. Seolha asks Young if she has someone who makes her heart flutter only when he looks at him. Yunshi smiles with a note of irony, saying that she has long forgotten how it was. Smiling, she hugs Saola, joking that she was just glad that Saola finally made her sympathy. Before Seola has time to answer, an emergency message appears on the TV screen. The news is warned of the dangerous slippage of roads through a snowstorm and urge drivers to be especially careful. He sighs, who is dissatisfied with how she hates wearing many layers of clothing in cold weather. These only carelessly humbles, almost without listening to it. Her thoughts go away somewhere far away. It came again in the time of year. Meanwhile, Youngma at home sits in silence, endlessly scrolling in his head. And then he remembered that he spoke about the dream in which someone was crying. 10 years ago, on the same snow-covered day, there was an accident at a pedestrian crossing, the culprit of which was a drunk driver. His gaze falls on a frame with a photo where they are together. He looks at her carefully, asking why she was crying. But she asks if she misses that he is the only one who visits her every year. He takes the phone and calls someone. Jun's father immediately asks what to do in the call. Instead of an immediate response, Jungam asks whether he is busy this weekend. The father replies that he plays in golf with the head of Taikon. Although it is golf, it is a real business. Then he invites Jongam to help him at the meeting. Jongvu is confident in his abilities and says he will handle himself. But the father insists that Jongvu says she already has plans. The father insists on their change. Jongwell looks at a photo with a girl and thinks that his father has forgotten her completely. The next day, employees discuss the anniversary of the company tomorrow and the day off. One asks what she plans to do. She replies, just sleep. They approve of this idea and give it an energy drink. When the day approaches the completion, hands next to Chongmu, which is busy with work, seemingly suggesting that he is thoughtful, and she thinks whether it is worth asking for him. She did not have time to start, as he noted that she looks tired and asks if everything is fine. He advises her to go home first, because he still has a lot of work. When Chelek returns home with the young and gladly discusses his future weekend, she thinks how it happened that she has never been able to ask the jungle a single question. Suddenly, she stops and says Yunchim that she must go to see him. Meanwhile, the jungle falls on the couch in his office and plunges into memories of the night that happened 10 years ago. That night, he talked to the girl on the phone, discussing something she bought, something she was looking forward to throughout the year. He apologized for failing to go with her because of an urgent meeting. As soon as she was going to answer, he heard the car knocked it down and asked if everything was fine with it, constantly repeating the greeting, but She did not answer because her phone remained on a snow-covered land. The jungle wakes up from sleep without even noticing the coat that was thrown at him. She inspects him and asks if everything is fine with him. Without thinking, he hugs her. When she answers the arms, he asks what brought her here, and she confesses that she came to wait for him. Noticing the coat, he asks for him. She replies that she did not want him to be cold. She gently tells him that he can always turn to her for support, even if she may not be too useful. He apologizes for making her worry. She tries to say something, but he suddenly takes her hand and says, "It's not good." When she is interested in what happened, he puts her hand on her face and, playfully inflating, promises that he will never release her hand throughout her life. It causes her slight redness on the face. To change the topic, he asks her plans for the evening. He nods and says they need to go. When she asks where, she adds that she suddenly felt nervous. He asks why she is worried and invites her to eat. He just says that there is a little more important now than work. At home, Chanva prepares dinner for them. While he is cooking, he asked about the clothes he gave her. It appears in these things a little awkwardly and notes that the clothes are a little too big, but is suitable for wearing. The Jungma blushed and looked away. Solka sits at the dining table, glancing his home and noting that at home is cleaner than someone else, appetizing the appearance of a dish. She looks at her. As soon as she tastes, she immediately relaxes. The dish is delicious. After dinner, they watch the horror movie together. While Save is watching the movie, Jungmoose covers his eyes like a frightened boy. She tries to touch him, but by accident, her hand falls too close to the area of his bathing suit. Understanding where she touched, she immediately pulls out her hand, flashing a blush. Junlu winks and says that if she wanted to touch him, she could just say so. Embarrassed, she tries to justify that it was a random touch. But he, with a smile, takes her hand and puts it again in the same place, asking if she really does not want to touch him at all. She can't force her unless she wants it. Without being lost, she instantly replies that she never said it. He smiles, takes the remote, and asks if you can stop the movie. She nods shyly as a sign of consent. Gently touching her chin, he gently kisses her. One kiss goes smoothly into the next, and soon the night unfolds into a long and rich event. The next morning, Chungmul holds a village behind, stubbornly without letting it out, whatever her attempts may be. Sighing, she asks how much more they will remain in such a pose. He carelessly replies that because she complained of back pain, he just wants to help her. Then, with a mischievous smile, she reminds her that she wanted to be the main knight. She was embarrassed. She quickly covers his mouth, murmuring that this is not what happened. He only in a smile notes how she touched him again, joking. She asks him if she will be alone. However, he is not sure that he will do nothing in the bathroom. Seol, with a moaning, asks him not to bother her because she can no longer stand more. Then he asks her to wait a little while, filling the bath. She watches him depart and asks if he really is going to do it himself. He turns and tells her that in his house she should not even lift her finger because she already wants to worry about him at work. While bathing jointly in the Jongmu bath, she thanks her, talking tenderly than usual. He attracts her to himself, but at the same moment when he is about to break the promise, her stomach grunts loudly. Silence is overwhelmed around. Seola is filled with red and looks at him sharply, accusing his exhaustion. Gloyed from laughter, he asks her not to look at him with his sweet eyes because it makes him a desire to kiss her. And of course, he does it. And just as instantly, his promise breaks. Responding, she rips in her bag in search of what the director needs. In the end of the conversation, Junmu raises the snowman. His face changes instantly, delaying deep sadness. Junmu, a sprouting snowman, at ease notes that he did not even know her passion for statuettes. He only shrugs, noting that he has seen them several times. Then she asks whether she collects such statuettes every season. She is interested in asking if there is a specific statuette she wants, and she replies that it is Rudolph. Because, in her opinion, this statuette is the sweetest. Chungmu does not speak a word in response. Instead, he skillfully changes the topic of conversation, asking her what she would like to eat. The next day, while working in your office, reflecting in his thoughts, Mupin suddenly remembered her figure of the snowman. He had no idea that she had such a thing. It was at this point that the phone rang. It was his mom. She says she thought about him and asks if he wants to eat something special. He replies that he can take care of himself. He then asks if she still goes shopping only during the sale, reminding that he gave her credit card. She smiles slightly, saying that spending a lot on food is a waste, and she just can't get rid of the old habit. He promises to visit her at the hotel this weekend, and is almost going to end the conversation when she stops him. She promises to prepare him fried anchovies when he comes, because it is his favorite dish. He begins to explain to her that fried anchovies are not his favorite dish, but a hasta. But he stops and tells her that there is no need to cook. She just has to relax during her stay in Korea. Meanwhile, the Tae-hoon goes to Venus' store and instantly draws attention. Everyone cannot look away from him. He goes to the store and notices Olu, who, standing near the showcase, tries to choose a tie for Chongmu. She is clearly immersed in reflection. Her look is constantly thrown away between options. Imaging Chongmu in this clothing, her face is filled with a blush. She looks at the tie that has attracted her attention, thinking whether she will be the perfect birthday gift, and send a message asking him no longer gifts. She agreed, but then she purchased a gift for him, which she never presented it. But now everything has changed. She is not just his employee. She is his girl. Taegun comes from behind, asking if she buys something for her boyfriend, just when she calls Jono. Without thinking, she takes the phone and leaves the store, even though Taegun. Subsequently, during coffee with Yunchun, Seolha is interested in work at work. As always, Yunchun complains about a heavy load. But suddenly, Seolch blossoms, saying that a real handsome man came to the store today. Seolha leans out excitedly and reports that it was Cho Teng, the eldest son of the Taekong group. Seol only clips his eyes, not understanding who is talking about. Suddenly, a deep voice asks her if she really thinks. It begins to answer, but the words get stuck in the throat. Then she notices that Jaeon is standing nearby. Still looking at Saul? He says she can never be found when she is with Yunchim. Sayola rushes in a bag, murmuring that she did not hear her phone calling. When he finally lifts his head, he sees that the place is empty. Yunchim has already left. John Liu admits that you need to thank the youth for giving them the opportunity to go for a joint walk. When walking, Ziola asks what if people start a gossip about them. Changum only shrugs and replies that it would be great, because they would no longer have to hide their relationship. Then he asks if he can take her hand, but she refuses. Without seeming, he asks at least to kiss her. She refuses again. Rejecting the topic, he asks her to plan nothing for him for that weekend, because he has a personal question that needs to be resolved. Interested, she asks what's the case. He tells her that meets her mother. A lot of time has passed since their last meeting, so there is some inconvenience between them. When they go and talk, the guard imperceptibly photographs them and sends a tag. As soon as Tegan looked at the picture, he immediately recognized the hole, and immediately he realizes that she is a Jeongum girl. The next day, Jongmoose writes carefully when the ink suddenly ends in his handle. He deviates on the chair, looking at his calendar. He realizes that there is very little time left for the weekend. Outside the office of Seola is focused on its task when it receives a call from it. Needs ink for the handle. He asks to just tell him where it is and he will find. But she refuses and assures that she will bring him. She goes to his office and says she has acquired a lot of stock because she noticed that he uses only one ink pen. Taking things from her, he said he would do everything himself. Then she thanked her for having come, even in spite of employment. Looking at her, he easy to add that I am always happy to see it. She turned back, blushing, and reminded him that she asked not to look at her during her work. He jokingly hugs her, offering to escape from work before. Concerned, it is removed, saying that it has urgent cases. Then he quickly flies out of his office. About Jongmoo and his bride, who probably plan to meet their parents for dinner this weekend. However, she hoped to hear from him a clear yes or no. In any case, she thinks that he will spend his weekend as well as she. The next morning, she has breakfast with Yunchim. Yunchim complains that Sichalga is constantly walking herself. She even woke up early to go with her. And thank you that you are worried about her. A few years ago, when Yunchi's father was at a court hearing, the prosecutor presented the object that the victim kept at the time of the attack. It was a broken figure of Rudolph. All her father's words were apologized, but he assured that he did not remember anything. Since then, Sayol has always brought a statuette to the cemetery. She chose the day before the anniversary of death to visit the cemetery and not meet the family of the deceased. She was aware that it would not change anything. The image of a broken figure did not come out of her thoughts. That is why she left the figures on the grave of Chai Jong-yong. The feeling that moving on was like to betray memory. John Shim asks this Ul-ha about dinner with John Moo, about which she heard rumors. In addition, Village was the first to meet his parents. Scylla believes that it doesn't matter. Having changed the topic quickly, she reports Sayolhi that the next day will celebrate the 50th anniversary at the Amore Hotel and invites them to attend the event. It is open to all. The next day in the West in Amore, Junmoo appears with thoughts about the beginning of the hotel business. He is immersed in his thoughts when he suddenly hears someone exclaims his name, an elegant woman fit, and he smiles and welcomes, noting that a long time has passed. She confesses that she missed him and asks how he did. Meanwhile, Solha noticed how Jongmu holds a woman in his arms. She instantly recognizes the woman from the photo she saw in the article. It is CH Kani, the youngest daughter of the Takyu group, about rumors about the bride Jongmu. The worldview of the Solha is feverish. She was stunned. Jongmu said she was meeting her mother. Can it mean that he wants to introduce her to his bride? At the same time, John is convinced that Taeyoon is trying to establish a relationship with Venus, because having an alliance is better than rivalry. She tells Yoonchi that she needs to visit the toilet. Going. She thinks that now here to enjoy the moment. She decided to deal with this a little later, so everyone is already in the toilet. Even she stands outside and looking for something in the bag. Meanwhile, Taegun, looking for his sister, goes to the restroom. From the things, the young falls out the object and rolls towards Hun. It is mowed and repels him. Yoonchim stops him in surprise and asks why he repels another's thing. In addition, the least he could do was lift it. Taegun notes that she did not have to miss it at all. They exchanged views, and after a short moment, he says if she is really offended, he will apologize. But in response, only smiles. She asks him to forget about it and goes away, emphasizing that she does not need any compensation. But before she has time to leave, Taeyoon gently puts her business card between her fingers and moves away, having told her, "Call me if you need." Yoonchim looks at a business card, reads his name, and realizes that she has not recognized him earlier because his horrible behavior has overshadowed the appearance. He is also a violent rest with which the company is constantly trying to give advice. The young people replied that she tried to avoid garbage. When Seola asks the details, the young people replies, "Forget." Seola decides to reject the thoughts of Taegun and Kang-hee, focusing on a pleasant time with the Yuench. Meanwhile, Kang-chi negligently escorts his hands on the chest. Approving that she removes some pile, Chong warns it to leave it, warning that people can misunderstand their actions. However, it is too late, because rumors about them are beginning to spread. Kang-hee asks whether a little misunderstanding is really such an important misunderstanding, and notes that it is not worried at all. However, Jongmu confesses that it affects it, and she charming it, asking if he has a girl. She recalls that he never met anyone while studying at school. Jongmu avoids answers, casting a look at the clock and adding that he has to meet someone shortly. She invites somehow to go together for dinner. However, he strongly states that he has a girl and proposes to meet another at another event. When Junmoo later comes to the mom's room at the hotel, she gladly shows the gifts she purchased for him, from nuts to remove his migraines to vitamin supplements and even a sweater. She also surprised him, confessing that she bought a gift for Silly. She asks whether he meets with Silla. She also remembers how wonderful the Tisiola servant was. They go to visit the Hyunyeon's grave. His mother puts a gift that she purchased for Kanyeon, noting that it is her first visit to the grave. So she bought a lot. She confesses that these things were worth a little, but she is sorry that she did not buy them for Kanjeon when he was still alive. Angry, she apologizes to Jongmu for making him carry this burden alone. She adds that she had never had to depart, but could not put up with the loss of Honeyyeon. Jong comforts her, accusing herself of what happened and regretted that he did not go from Conahil that day. His mother tries to comfort the son, assuring that it is not his guilt and that he should not blame himself. Later at home, Chanma puts a bag with a snowman figure on the tabletop. He remembers how he visited the Hononig grave with his mother, where they found a figure. The mother asked if he had left her. Chong Moon always believed that one of the close Kanyeons leaves the figures on the anniversary of her death every year. Jong Moon believes that the fact that Seolha also has the same figure is a pure accident. He receives a message from his mother in which she thanks him for taking her to the cemetery. He replies when you offer to meet in the near future on a cup of tea. In a few days at the work of the Enmu, he moves through the company, communicating with the heads of departments, and Seolha steps after him. Completes. Seolha, feeling fatigue, she moves away, considering that today we need to talk to Junam. At this point, a man approaches Junam, informed him of the presence of Tagan. In Junam Solha's office, he serves tea to him and the tag, and then leaves them alone for conversation. When Tagan is easily mentioned by the possibility of becoming a Mao thanks to his relationship with Ka Erains, Yunmas fades at a time when he drinks tea. Surprised by such a remark, Taegun, noticing the reaction, asks if everything is fine, and continues to praise Ka Exu, emphasizing that she is a wonderful person. Janmu, interested, notes that he did not know before how close the Taegun and the Ki were. Taegun explains that Ka Shi was upset when John suddenly completed their meeting at the hotel. Then he suggests that you think about the opportunity to meet Ka. 11. He suggests that perhaps the head of Venus will support the idea with the mat. He asks John Moo whether the reason why he cannot meet KXA is his secretary. Subsequently, Taegun comes out of Venus with a smile, thinking that John is predictable. When he asked John Moo about his secretary, the purpose was to see how he would be lost. But unfortunately, she already has a guy. Taegun says that if he cannot make a connection through the family, there will be no other way out. Looking at the message from the guard who photographed S.A. Ol-ha and John Kima-chun, he sees that the head of the company, Wenis, still knows nothing. Suddenly, he notices Seol-ha, who stands next to the Unshim, whom he immediately recognizes. He asks for young people in Seleha whether she goes from work with Yum. Seol-ha replies that they are going to have dinner together. Feeling the hesitation of Seol-ha, the young gently takes her hand. She encourages Seol-ha to be frank with Yunchim. She draws her attention to the fact that sincerity is her best feature and calls for everything she has in her soul. However, during the Seol dinner, he is so nervous that he does not dare to admit his concern and even a little bit of food. He suddenly apologizes, and it causes the heart of Siklak anxiously to shake. But John Moo quickly explains that he apologizes because he was concerned about whether her rumors have been affected by his engagement. He tells how he spent a weekend visiting his late sister with his mother. Earlier, he always did it himself. But this year, he was accompanied by his mother. The moved, the sat hugs him. Scylla apologizes with tears in her eyes. She acknowledges that she had to ask him earlier, but was afraid of confirmation of rumors. Paying out, she says she did not want to touch such a painful topic for him. He reassures her, promising to be careful in the future to avoid misunderstandings. That night, they discuss many topics. She remembers that she learned about Youngva's childhood, how he could not live with Chaz because of his family rejection. Seeing her paved eyes, people decide that she is either ill or experienced a heavy separation. Therefore, they decide to leave it alone. Silha later meets Youngma in his office. Having completed the work report, he looks into her face and gently touches her eyes, noticing swelling. She explains that she applied the ice before bedtime. He reminds her that he asked not to cry. Having said that at that moment he needs it, he attracts her closer and says that it is time to dine soon so you can close the door. His voice is skillfully weaved tenderness, from which she blushes instantly. He reproaches her in obscene thoughts, hugging her. It is at this moment. They are interrupted by the knock on the door. Jeongam replies that he will look then because he is now busy. After the employee goes, Solha, hiding behind Jongmu, felt relief, because in time she avoided an uncomfortable situation. Jongmu, a little disappointed, confesses that he does not like to hide their relationship and asks to be patient. He then wonders what she plans for the weekend, noting that he had completed all her business in advance to spend time with her. He gently holds her face, proclaiming that they have a lot of unforgettable moments they will experience together. Before he has time to answer, she is already at the door. Leaving the office, Siola draws attention to a group of people nearby. Among them, her look is attracted by a red-haired man. His face seems strangely familiar. Their views intersect for a moment, and she immediately distracts her eyes. Without her eyes, as if nothing had happened, she accelerates the step. He does not notice that a red-haired man still monitors her when he is moving. In the meantime, Taikan Group is interfering with the Taigun sitting in her office. Who asks him? Who is Chong Girl? Taigun carelessly replies that Chongum Girl is more beautiful than her. It skeptically shakes, not affected. He says so about every girl. He offers her, if she is so interesting, to come with him for the next business meeting. She refuses, saying that she will find out everything on her own. Collecting her things, she warns Taigun that nothing good will work if he wants to face Venus, and it reminds of his own not-too-brilliant track record. She stops at the door and adds that he should also give up drugs. After she left, Taegun dropped back in his chair, quietly repeating her words. Will it all end bad for him? That night, Siola lay in bed. Her heart was crazy, preventing her from falling asleep. Waiting for a traveling on a weekend from Chongma does not allow her to fall asleep. As soon as she comes back to the other side, her phone vibrates. Noticing the name of Chongma on the screen, it immediately answers. She asks why he calls, to what he is responsible, what just misses her. Her face begins the ward with this answer. The heart beats even faster. He is looking forward to tomorrow, hoping it will come faster. Then, as if hesitant, he adds that he would like to be near her now. There was a short pause before his answer. This time, his voice sounded quieter. He will come to her because it was he who missed her most. The next day, they come to the hotel by the sea, where they enjoy delicious dishes throughout the day. Jong-moo looks closely at the Seol's shoe. His face gained an unusually serious look. Then, in a soft voice, he confesses to her that she really likes much more than she can imagine. Her heart flutters from his confession, and she squeezes his hand harder, smiling when she confesses to him that he also pleases him. Therefore, to some extent, it was ready for this point. Even after a hearty dinner, she still wants something sweet and insists on taking a cake for dessert. When she returns, she notices how to talk to a woman. Her gait slows down, and she watches carefully, standing aside. Before the woman is finally departing, she asks him if he caught up to another woman until she was. He is wondering if she is jealous, but she denies. He explains that the woman only asked the road and adds that all her accusations were a lie because she heard their conversation. He then notes that she was good, which causes anger at all around. After that, they go to a separate place near the beach where fireworks light the night sky. Instead of watching fireworks, they plunge into each other. After a while, Chungma is removed in such a way that whispers indicate that the car is too tight. He hints whether you should return to the hotel. The confused Seola covers the face, murmuring that the hotel is too far away. He smiles and kissing her top agrees. Stay exactly where they are now. Junmoo says Seolsi that he should just kiss because he forgot contraceptives at the hotel. However, when they return to the hotel, the events unfold much more intense than just kisses. Meanwhile, Tagan is in a club at a hotel surrounded by women, but his thoughts wander somewhere far away. He recalls one case with his father that happened for a long time. My father gave him a slap for a failed investment and asked, "What is Venus special?" He then noted that Jongmoo studied at one college and asked why Tagan could not be as successful as Jongmoo. Tagan was silent, but his father insisted, asking if he could once catch up with Jongmoo. Tagan looks back at the photo of Jongmoo and Seola, realizing that the view that Jongmoo looks at Seola testifies to his seriousness about her. Then a red-haired man with a suitcase appears and reports to Gun that he brought what he asked for. Tagan complains that bringing him a couple of medicines has taken too long. The man explains that it is becoming more and more difficult to steal past power. In addition, he easily states that he has dissolved the rumors of Jungma and Sikalch all over Venus. Hugs get a good blow. He says he has instructed to do it a long time ago, and asks if he knows how much he pays him. He informs the interlocutor that he will personally discuss the issues of Chongmu and Seol Esto with the head of the chap, because they will soon play golf together. Tagan smiles, noting that the seizure of the secretary seems to be a family feature. He thinks about how to spoil things for Jungma and Seol. We return to Jungma and Solchi. It opens a beer bank. Before meeting Jungma, she always dreamed of just sitting and drinking with him. She asks if he is able to keep alcohol well. She says she has never seen him drunk. Even when they have dinner together, he orders a drink but does not touch it. He explains what makes it to avoid actions that can then be regretted. Watching him, sitting at the table, he murmurs sleepily, asking her to call him once again, remembering the moment when she turned to him with a full name after she saw him with the lady. She smiles again, thinking that he cannot forever call him only Mr. Chow or Sir. She whispers quietly his name several times, feeling warm in his chest. At the club, a red man leaves a private tag room, boiling from anger. He was tired of performing all the dirty tag. Getting the phone to check the Jongmu's contact, he begins to think about other possibilities. When he leaves the hotel, he accidentally faces someone, sharply replies to them to keep track of where they go. Persons are apologized and quietly removed. The next morning, Chella tries to wake Chungma, calling his name. When he does not respond, she only shakes her head and turns quietly. Chungma is a real fool. She suddenly wakes up, remembering that today the wedding of Choi director. In a panic, she quickly dresses and rushes to the scene to catch up with Changmu. In a hurry, she does not notice the car approaching behind, until someone pulls her away. The man, which is manifested by Kimu Woovi, notes that to drive so carelessly on narrow streets is dangerous. Someone may be injured. He asks if everything is fine with her. She thanks him, pushing his hand out of his shoulder. However, his look is anxious. When he noticed her anxiety, he immediately apologized, noting that she looked like someone familiar to him. She waves, noting that this happens sometimes, and goes on. On the wedding site, Sela walks next to Chongma, feeling unusual excitement. She is surprised whether it is because they are at a wedding. They stop to talk to a woman who is the president of another company. During the conversation, Chonmu can't take his view from the souls. He apologizes and goes away to call his mother and talk to her alone. During the conversation, the mother asks if he is busy, to which he replies that not. She says she wants to prepare him a birthday soup from seaweed the next day. He promises to visit CAOLH, which causes her excitement and joy. She proposes to bring him something that may be needed, but he replies that everything is fine. Meanwhile, Seola looks at Chungma but accidentally encounters President Kim. He asks her where Chungma went and why he left his girlfriend, surprised and alarming her. President Kim noted that Chungma considers himself something special because he is a young CEO. Seol strains his hands, trying to keep calm. President Kim smiles and asks whether she did not know that Chongmu was an illegitimate child. Sai politely thanks President Kim, assuring that he appreciates his attention to Chongmu. With no support, Chonglu managed to join the law faculty of the leading university of Korea and graduate with honors. In addition, all the business projects he managed became successful. President Kim rejects this remark, noting that anyone can do what Jongmu did if he goes desperate. Seol-ha. She asks unmoved whether Jong-um has never been in a hopeless situation. At this point, Jong-mu, who listened to the conversation, smiles. Later that evening, Seol-ha and Jong-mu were sitting in his car parked near her area. He advises her to rest until she shares her impressions of her last day, and the inconvenient silence falls. It encourages him to ask if he is concerned about it. It replies quickly, "No," and it begins to dig in your bag. The clock beats the north and she gets a gift, greeting him on her birthday. She said that she always dreamed of giving him a gift, but still it remained impossible because he never received gifts from his subordinates. Jong-mu begins to unpack the gift, but the girl stops him, saying that it is worth opening him at home because she is a little awkward. With a joking smile, he says that it only warms his interest in the gift. She assures a little embarrassed that there is nothing special there, and he looks gratefully at her. She added that everything she gives him is always perfect. She urgently asks him to open a gift only when she is gone, and then goes quietly. He proposes to bring her to the house, but she replies that her house is quite nearby. Before she leaves, he says he calls her. When she goes, Chom opens a gift and looks at him in surprise. Suddenly, his phone died. It checks the message. His face is cloudy as soon as he notices the news that he is suspected of betraying the bride with the secretary. The article is added to a blurred photo where they are depicted together. Meanwhile, Tegan reads the same article. A smile does not get out of his face. The Che chapter is the news that John Moo is allegedly betraying to his bride. Then he directly asks John Moo, or is it true that he betrays his bride with the secretary? John Moo confidently replies that he has nothing with her. He is in a serious, sincere relationship with her. The chairman of the council scornfully notes that such feelings pass quickly. He emphasized how Chongum was pleading, promising to fulfill any request. Chom calmly replies, noting that he really agreed to do anything. However, it happened only because he was desperately set to save Kon-yun. The chairman of the committee reassures Chong-mu, explaining that his guilt is that Kion Age has been in a crash before treatment. However, Chong-mu firmly states that the accident could be avoided if the Chaz chapter had sent it to the United States. Chong-m's anger grows when he continues his story. He remembered how the head refused to come to the funeral of Konaon so that they would not know about his illegitimate children. He tells the head of the Chaz that the only reason for the name of the CHA is that he is his father. Therefore, the head should only use it as an excuse to interfere with his life. His mother explained that he was suddenly faint and they immediately turned for a medical examination. In despair of Chongum, he turned to his father, begging Venus for help. He kneeled in front of the head, asking to save the honey ion. The main Chocold asked, "What do you do to me in response?" In response, Chapter agreed to save his own daughter. Subsequently, when he returns home, Chun-woo sharply pressed on the brakes and squeezes the steering wheel from disappointment. The mother calls and he answers. The next day, Sawal-ha calls Youngma, who gets sick at home while she works. She proposes to bring the medicine and he apologizes for the article in the news. But she assures him that it is not true. Janmu recognizes that in fact their relationship is secret. He changes the topic of conversation, noting that her voice encourages him a little. She wants him to rest and recover faster. He says he will try to go to work in the afternoon, but she insists that he takes the day off, which he has never done before. Later, still feeling bad, John is annoyed with his condition because he so wants to see Sol-hoo. Suddenly, he gets a mysterious message from an unknown number. It says that his twin sister probably cries in that world and watches every step. On Venus, Seola works when he suddenly hears someone approaching steps. Waiting to see a nun, she rotates, but instead finds that she is standing in front of her. And I saw instead of a hall of a harsh head of tea. They go to the office of Yongmu to talk alone. The head immediately asks how much time she works at the John, with a hint that a mess in Chong is not a surprise. He adds that Seola is about a year, old John, and is with him daily, so it is natural that there are feelings between them. He tells her that John will soon get engaged. He organizes a meeting between John Moo and the youngest daughter from the Tiakang group. He also appeals to Seola to prevent the spread of meaningless rumors, similar to those that arose the day before. He adds that although Seola could have fun, it is time to realize her place. That night, in the empty building, a red-haired man with a wicked smile thinks that he did not expect such a rapid appearance of the jungle. The jungle, with a clear indignation, takes a step forward and asks the man the game he started. Earlier, leaving the office, Sola received a message from the jungle with the fact that he could not meet her. But it still hurts. Much more than she expected. Returning now, he extends his business card, which he has stated that he is Kim Jong-chan, an employee of Venus. Annoyed, Chan states that he is indifferent who he is and demands to move to the merits. An annoyed Chan Moo asks what he means. For the first time, this is heard about it. Solha never mentioned her family. Chan Moo indicates Chan's dream that he no longer intends to continue this conversation and so that he does not try to contact him again. When John Woo is going away, Chan's sleep asks whether he has forgotten a man in the name of Ming Don Yu Yu, which forces John Yu Yu to die. There is a heavy snow on the street, and the dream of Chan continues, remembering that there was snow that night too. That night, the sailboat's father put an end to his sister's life. Meanwhile, Shiloka sits at home, waiting for Jungma to write to her. She wants to contact him first, but does not know what to say. She notices a button on the floor and thinks of he left him with Jungma when he came on the eve of the trip. It was his first visit to her apartment, and she was very worried about it. She said she would have cleaned if she knew about his arrival. She saw that Wood wanted to take control and denied, stating that she would do it too. They spent the night in conversations and watching her photos. Then they moved to the bed, where he confessed that it was not a real cause of his visit. She hugged him, explaining what she invited him. Returning now, she looks out the window, thinking that she has always lived in this apartment alone, but today there is an unusual emptiness. The next day, Venus Jongma cannot get rid of the conversation with Song-chun. Song-chun asked if he knew that a person needed for a comfortable life. And when Jongmu remembered money, Shang-chun named his price, 100 million, won with delivery in 3 weeks. Chan's dream threatened that if the John did not fulfill his demand, he would tell everyone about it. The reflection of the John is full. He concludes that the dream of Chan skillfully possesses the art of negotiation, and if he needs money, he will get them as much as he wants. She just leaves without regret. However, Song-chan noted that hidden tricks were still in his arsenal. This made Jong Mu what the secrets are hiding behind the face of Song-chan. Remembering Men Don-in, the man whom Seong-chan considers related to Seol-ha, mixed Jong-mu has tensed. He is concerned that he hates Don-in, and the idea that he can be Seola's father only exacerbates his anxiety. He realizes that it is not necessary to believe every word of a vat, but this thought does not leave it. He picks up his private detective, Mu Yang. He asked Mu Yang to check background Mindong Liu. After completing the purchase, he extends her credit card. She asks if she is sure that she does not want any reward and suggests to give as much as she desires. Find out who Dunlu is, and find out if it is really guilty. Yoon is busy working when Tegan suddenly appears, which is quite amazing. She exclaims loudly from surprise, returning to him. You categorically refuse, saying goodbye to him. When he goes, she notices a small gift on the counter. It is a lip balm that she lost in the hotel. As soon as the Taigan goes to his car, he thoughtfully transfers purchases to his driver. He thinks that Yun Shim is a difficult case, but it is quite interesting. If he waits for a long time, then he may be able to meet the Mini. Meanwhile, in the Youngma office, Solha cannot stop coughing. But she is just waving, saying that it is because of the weather. When Sula was going to go, Chongmu stopped her, touching his forehead to check the presence of heat. Their views met for a moment. There is tension. Before letting her go, he advises her to return home. Shelga, feeling something unlawful, asks if he has any plans. He just replies yes and goes away. When she sat home on the same day, she does not leave her suspicion that something has changed with John Ma. He seems concerned. She wondered if he had a conversation with Shou, or maybe go with Aurora. She whispers quietly to talk to him tonight, even if it is just a phone conversation. At that moment, Monmu asks if she refers to her boy who causes Slol by surprise. She nervously welcomes her, but having a John, noting excitement, assures that there is no reason to feel awkward. Before leaving the John MU, he carefully looks for pharmacies on the internet. It is at this point that Mujong appears. He says that after graduation, it became impossible to see a Chonmi. Once they are arranged, Mujong Khan turns to Jeonmu an envelope, asking if they are certain in their actions. Adds that there are photos from the scene. Youngmu squeezes in the hands of paper. His voice trembles with anger and pain when he quietly says that Sun Youngjae could be saved. He regrets that she did not die instantly instead of experiencing all the suffering she would stand. Mu Young tells him that it is just an assumption based on a report on the autopsy and the doctor's opinion. No one really knows what happened in those minutes after the accident. Mango moves another envelope in the direction of Chongm. But the new entry shows something important. Inside the man standing still. However, it remains undoubted that Don Woo was involved in this accident. When we think about it all, still the fact that he loves Selch remains unchanged. However, what was once a simple emotion has now grown into some more complex feelings. He remembers the day when the Dong was held accountable. First, he feels rage, and then he is wrapped by a wave of sadness filled with regret and compassion. However, above all, he feels all the injustice of this situation. He is convinced that Seolga deserves only love, and he is frightened. How much feelings for her are growing every day. His tears fall on the floor when he believes that the love of Seolhu has become a continuous sin. He doesn't even find words to express how unfair it is. The drama is only gaining momentum.